Hey folks, well, as we know, every sports team typically has a mascot, and it was hard not to notice how Snoop Dogg was so ever present in the recently completed Paris Olympics. From being one of the torchbearers, bringing the Olympic flame to Paris, and popping up here, there, and everywhere in photos with members of U.S. Olympic teams and performing in the final ceremonies, he was pretty much ever present. I mean, it just goes to show, how lovable he is, not only on the national level at home in USA, but also on an international level where he enjoys great popularity. And this recent bit of ambassadorship has only, cemented his reputation, which all comes as a bit of surprise when you think of his history. In his youth, he was a bit of a bad boy, quite literally. He ran with the LA Crips. He did prison time off and on for possession of guns and narcotics. He and his bodyguard were at one point charged with murder of a rival gang member until he was defended by OJ's former lawyer, Johnny Cochran, and the case was, they were acquitted. But so he's had a pretty checkered past, but he's had some really, good stuff in his resume as well too. He's been a big supporter of his community. He's involved in a lot of charities. He started a youth football league for underprivileged youth. One year at Thanksgiving, he gave away 3,000 turkeys to a, low-income LA neighborhood, and he does a lot of other stuff under the radar without, intentionally drawing any attention to his name. So he's, pretty remarkable, multifaceted. I mean, most everyone knows him as a kind of a West Coaster, G-funk gangster rapper. But he's also developed this, other alternate alter ego in his, co-hosting of this, dinner potluck party show with decor diva Martha Stewart. And, their sort of unlikely friendship has, amused a lot of people, but it just goes to show that he is, pretty capable of, doing so much more than he might originally have been typecast in. Really, he's a remarkable fellow. And, the background to all this is that he has quite a remarkable horoscope as well, too, chock full of pretty impressive patterns. So let me get into that right now. Okay, so here we go. So for the record, Snoop Dogg was born 20th of October 1971, 6:20 p.m., Long Beach, California. So, astrologically speaking, Snoop enjoys an embarrassment of riches in his horoscope when it comes to, significant yogas. Let's take a turn through the chart and see what we find. Always inspect the Kendras first and look to see if there's a planet in its own or exalted sign. So right away, I see Venus in its own sign in Libra in the seventh house. This constitutes Malavya Yoga, one of the esteemed Mahapurusha yogas. Creates a kind of an archetype and can give a person great qualities as far as, the arts, entertainment, enjoyment of life, including music, of course. And in the seventh house, can signify somebody who's a pretty good diplomat, reaches out to others, forms relationships and partnerships that are productive and fruitful in his lifetime. The other Mahapurusha Yoga is Mars, which is Ruchika Yoga, formed by Mars in exaltation in the 10th house, where incidentally it also acquires directional strength, Digbala. So Ruchika Yoga is something of a mark of a leader, an organizer, manager, someone who exhibits courage in the face of adversity and has the ability to marshal his energies and indeed to lead others. So this is, these two already, these are fairly impressive. Now look further and we find not one, not two, but three dharma-karma adipati yogas, which are formed when you have both a trinal lord and a kendra lord. So we've got quite a cluster in the seventh house, and this is a good place to start looking, where we will see Moon, lord of the fourth, and Sun, lord of the fifth, together in the seventh. This forms a true Raja Yoga. We also have here in the seventh as well Sun, Lord of the fifth, and Venus, Lord of the seventh. This is what we call a regular dharma-karma adipati yoga. It doesn't rise to the level of a Raja yoga, but still very significant. And last but not least, through the mutual aspect between Jupiter and Saturn across the second and eighth house axes, we have Jupiter, Lord of the ninth, coupled with Saturn, Lord of the 10th. And that creates a true Raja Yoga, Lord of 9 and 10. Very productive. So these are all quite impressive in and of themselves. The ones involving Venus are relatively robust because Venus is strong. Sun is weak and Moon is weak, but be that as it may, Venus really carries the weight here. Of the Jupiter-Saturn pair, Saturn is bright during its retrogression phase, and that gives it strength. Now, he has a couple of Dana yogas as well, too, sort of indicators for wealth. Those are formed by combinations of trinal lords and money lords. Money lords being lords of the second and the 11th. So we have one here, Sun and Venus, where Venus is Lord of the second, a money house, while the Sun is Lord of the fifth, one of the triconas. So that's a Dana yoga. Then we have another one here with Jupiter, Saturn again, but now playing a somewhat different role. Jupiter is still Lord of the ninth, but now Saturn is functioning as Lord of the 11th, the other money house. So Jupiter, Saturn, that forms another Dana yoga. And again, that's robust thanks to Saturn's brightness. So there's a multitude of things going on. What do we have so far? 2 Mahapurusha yogs, 3 Dharma-karma adipati yogs, 2 Dana yogs. Okay, what else? There's more. Sun and Mercury together, that forms the basis of Buddha Disha Yoga, but we have to pass the test. Does it meet the other criteria? Does it influence the first or the fifth house, the self or the intellect? Yes, it does. Sun, Mercury together in the seventh, they aspect the Lagna. Ka-ching, that's one hit on eligibility, and it's not necessary now, but the other is there as well too. Sun is the Lord of the fifth house, and that pulls it all together in quite an impressive way. Buddha Ditya Yoga. So what is that? It's a mark of intelligence, analytical skills, communication skills, quick on your feet as far as verbal wit, and, also good, business skills, negotiating skills, all of which are important either to a writer of any kind, an analyst of any kind, a business person of any kind. These are all pretty good signs. What else is going on here? Some might note that the Sun is debilitated, and we might suspect that as some source of weakness for those yogas in which it participates. But if you do the analysis for Nicha Bhanga, you'll see that the Sun is in a Kendra. The Sun is associated with its dispositor Venus, which is also in the Kendra. Incidentally, Sun is in the Kendra from both the Lagna and from the Moon. It's associated with Venus, its dispositor. That dispositor Venus is also in the Kendra from both Sun and Moon. So far, this is pretty wonderful. What else can help out the Sun? Mars, the Lord of the sign in which the Sun would be exalted. That's Aries. Mars is the Lord. Mars is in a Kendra from the Lagna, also from the Moon. And then what other planet could help it? The planet that would be exalted in Libra, that's Saturn. But Saturn is out of play with respect to helping Sun here. It's Kendra from neither the Lagna nor the Moon, nor does it aspect or associate with the Sun. So it doesn't help. But there's already huge support from Venus and Mars. And at the end of it all, Venus, the dispositor of this debilitated Sun, and Mars, the Lord of the Sun's exaltation sign Aries, those two are in mutual Kendras as well. Now, I've lost track of how many points this has generated, but I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points out of a possible 12. So this is really a superbly remediated Sun. What we say about Nichabanga, it's not canceled, but it's effectively repaired to a very, very significant degree. So it's like a sword forged in iron, put through all this duress, and it comes out stronger than ever because of the remediation that it's been put through. So Sun achieves Nichabanga status, and because it's involved in several yogas, including two dharma-karma adipati yogas, one of which rises to the level of a Raja Yoga, we can then refer to this Sun as Nichabanga Raja Yoga. And again, now you get Sun and Mars, two Kshatriya grahas in the Kendras. Again, it's another mark of leadership on whatever level. And this is true of Snoop Dogg. So what else is there? There's something else that's, oh yes, okay. A cluster of 4 grahas, 4 visible grahas, all in one sign, is called, sort of a soft, mild version of Pravraja, which, in some contexts can be interpreted as a spiritual yoga, indicative of, somebody embracing, religion or spiritual life, especially later in their life. Now, in his life thus far, I mean, Snoop Dogg was born a Baptist. At one point, he embraced the Nation of Islam. Another point in his life, after visiting Jamaica, sort of his roots, he became a Rastafarian. But he refers to himself currently as a born-again Christian. So in this huge cluster of 7 planets, irrespective of, the Pravraja Yoga status, this huge cluster is indicative of a lot of activity going on in the 7th house. And what's that all about? It's about outreach. It's about partnership. It's about relationships. And we see this with some of the best artists. They're not recluses. They really engage with their public and, broaden their appeal in so doing. They cross, so many borders. So he's pretty remarkable in all of this with a very, very powerful chart. So then we can consider the dasha and, selectively some of the bhuktis as well too in his career thus far. So he, for the most of his life, I mean, since he was about 13 years old, he was in Saturn dasha. So, Saturn's a malefic. Saturn's in the 2nd house. That can be indicative of, some, less than ideal dietary habits. And, it's no secret that he's a big fan of cannabis and has supported, in fact, campaigned for its legalization and has his own line of, Snoop Leaf or whatever it's called. But that aside, he's got several malefics in the angles: Mars, Rahu, Ketu, and the Sun. So he's, lived a kind of rough and tumble life in his early days. And during his Saturn dasha, Saturn, in any of its periods, will also give results for its nakshatra dispositor, which in Saturn's case is the moon. So the moon is dark in the 7th house, and that verges on becoming a malefic to make for Mars, Rahu, Ketu, Sun, and the moon as what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 malefics in the angles. That sort of like marks out his era, running with the Crips and in and out of prison. But during the same Saturn dasha, during his Venus bhukti, now recall that Venus is one of the strongest planets in his horoscope. Notice that it's Swarashi, it's its own sign, forms Malavya Yoga in the 7th house. Meanwhile, significantly, Venus escapes combustion. It's quite far away from the sun. So it's got many virtues, and I'm not going to show it here, but Venus is exalted in his Navamsha, the 9th harmonic. Venus is also exalted in the Dashamsha, the 10th harmonic, each of which, govern respectively relationships and sort of, career activities. So he hasn't got to Venus dasha yet, but he's experienced a lot of success during his Venus bhuktis. So in 1993, he broke out with his first album, under the mentorship of famous rapper Dr. Dre. He broke out with this album Doggy Style, which instantly put him on the map. People loved his style, loved his vocals, loved his manner, and so he went quite big with that. So that, Venus is involved in multiple yogas here. four of them. What is it? Malavya, there's a dharma-karma adipati yoga here. And what else is going on? Part of the Pravraja and something else with which I'm forgetting here right now. But be that as it may, lots of, Malavya, there's a Dana yoga there as well too. So four significant yogas that Venus is involved with. And Venus brings the power to those yogas. So then, flash forward a little bit into Mercury Dasha when he signed with Geffen Records, and he brought out another album. It was called R&G, Rhythm and Gangsta, and he had a hit there that he did with Pharrell Williams, Drop It Like It's Hot, and that was the first of his singles that went to a #1. He was running Mercury at the time. Now, the interesting thing about Mercury, I mean, it's part of, it forms Buddha Ditya Yoga. It's part of this Pravraja Yoga. Mercury, during its periods, it will also give the results of its dispositor as well, too. Mercury is in a Rahu nakshatra, so it will give the results of Rahu. I knew I was forgetting something. That brings us back to this Rahu and Mars. I neglected to speak of this earlier. This is another one of these yogas that people, scarcely think to look for because it's a little bit more subtle. But it's what we call a nodal Raja Yoga. So let's dwell on this. When you see a node in an angle, you should look to inspect any planet with which it associates and see whether that graha is the lord of a trinal house. Now, in this case, Mars is Lagnesh, Lord of the Lagna, and it's a basically AC/DC kind of planet graha in that it can function either as a Trikona Lord, 159, 1, or as a Kendra Lord, 14710, 1. So in this instance, we're going to use, we say Rahu sits in the 10th house and acts as a proxy for its sign dispositor Saturn. So in your mind's eye, you can sort of picture Saturn there sitting in Rahu's place. And then we regard at our discretion, because Mars as Lagnesh has this power to act as either a Trikona Lord or a Kendra Lord. We, in place of Rahu, we drop in Saturn, which is its legitimate, Rahu is a proxy for its sign dispositor Saturn. Imagine Saturn there, and now Mars is a Trikona Lord. So you would have Mars a Trikona Lord, coupled with Saturn in your mind's eye, a Kendra Lord. This is all quite legitimate. I'm not, pulling this out of my ass. This comes from Shastra. So this creates a nodal Raja Yoga, and quite a powerful one too, because Mars, as pointed out earlier, is powerful. It's exalted and it's got Digbala. Okay, back to the Mercury Dasha. In Mercury Dasha, it's going to give results for Rahu. Rahu carries this nodal Raja Yoga, which it forms with Mars. And that's got a lot of juice associated with it, especially vis-a-vis career. So Mercury pulls that out. So in this era, 2004, when he signed with Geffen Records and did this song, Drop It Like It's Hot with Pharrell Williams, again, this, catapulted him even further into, sort of rapper superstar status. Flash forward a little bit further, fall of 2016, he, partnered in this very unlikely partnership with Martha Stewart, and doing this, what was it called? Martha and Snoop's potluck dinner party. Where, they would, cook together, and they had a lot of lighthearted banter and, a comedic style that really, they endeared themselves to the population. So this turned out to be quite successful, and it, kind of rebranded Snoop as something quite different from, a hard-ass rapper. He had a softer, gentler, funnier side that people had not seen before. Anyway, this all happened in Mercury, Jupiter. So if you look at Jupiter, it's in a, during its, I'd already pointed out that it creates a Raja Yoga with Saturn, it creates a Dana Yoga with Saturn, and during any periods of Jupiter, it will also give the results of its nakshatra dispositor, which in this case is Saturn. So Saturn pops up here again. So it's like a double invocation of the Raja Yoga and Dana Yoga that Jupiter and Saturn participate in. This happened in Mercury Jupiter. So he enjoyed great success there. Then in early K2 period, he joined Def Jam Recordings. And he was sort of made, executive, creative, and strategic consultant, where he basically, function as a liaison or, animateur, making things happen between, the executive group and, the label's artist body. So this all came about in K2 Venus. Well, we already know Venus has got the juice to, bring out all kinds of good stuff because it, is strong and it participates in 4 different yogas. But what about K2? Well, during its period, K2 will give the results of multiple grahas. Let me illustrate. A node will give results for any graha with which it associates, any graha that aspects it, the graha that disposits it by sign, and if we need to, we can look at its nakshatra dispositor as well. I usually don't go that third step because I got enough to work with the first 3. So let's illustrate. K2 will act on behalf of any planet associated with it, none in this case. Any planet that aspects it. Mars aspects it from the 10th house, and as we saw, Mars is powerful and participates in, its own Ruchika Yoga and this Nodal Raj Yoga. K2 also acts on behalf of Saturn, which aspects it. And Saturn is doubly involved in yogas, Raja Yoga and Dana Yoga with Jupiter. So more power associated with the K2 period, or any K2 periods, whether Dasha or Bhukti. K2 also gives results for its sign lord, which is the moon. And the moon, as we saw, forms Raja Yoga with the sun, as respectively 4th and 5th lords. And the moon is part of this, Raja Yoga as well too. So the K2 Dasha brings out a whole lot of power, and then with selective bhuktis within. And if you look back at Snoop's history, I mean, there's hardly a period in which, something isn't going on. He's been involved in so many things, from, fashion endorsements and sports affiliations and charity work and, his music. And he's acted in all kinds of TV shows and a few movies and any number of things. He's been so busy. So anyway, K2 Dasha, coupled with the Venus Bhukti, brought out this other, stellar period for him as well. So then that brings us right up to date, where during this period when, he's getting worldwide attention again for his frequent appearances in the Paris Olympics, this was occurring during K2 Rahu. So as I already just went through, K2 has the power to bring out, the effects of multiple grahas, Mars, Saturn, and the moon principally, all of which were involved in significant yogas. And then the Rahu Bhukti runs as well too, and that pulls in the Ruchika Yoga and its Nodal Raja Yoga as well too. So it's just one thing on top of the other that's given him, a great visibility during this time. What's interesting is that, it really sort of lights a fire, if you like, under Mars quite recently. I mean, K2 itself, the saying is K2 Vat Kuja Vat, which, and I might be saying that backwards, but basically K2 acts like Mars. So K2 has the Mars spirit. K2 brings out Mars specifically in this horoscope. Rahu brings out Mars as well too because of its association with it in this Nodal Raja Yoga. So Mars. Meanwhile, Mars is Lagnesh for Snoop, and Mars is associated with sports, and he's had a lifetime involvement in sports. First as a major fan, NBA, NFL, NHL. He's at one time or another worn like a dozen or 15 or 20 different jerseys for sports teams that he's either got a stake in or has got a loyalty for or a friendship with. And his involvement in youth sports for the underprivileged youth and all the rest of that. He's really been a great ambassador of sports. No surprise, and kudos to the Olympic Committee that they chose him as an Olympic torchbearer to lead up to the Paris Olympics in 2024. So really, I didn't know too much about Snoop until I started, reading up about him, and it was just awed again and again as I got into the analysis of his horoscope. So he's really quite a character. And you know what? He hasn't even got to his Venus Dasha yet. That's going to kick in 2027. So, and then that's a 20-year period. So, I think we're going to hear a lot more from him, and his successes will pile on success. Really quite a remarkable dude. Faux shizzle my nizzle. Okay, go Snoop, go.